minutes early, just to let people join and see that we're now online. So I'll just leave it a couple of minutes. I will just say that if you want to ask any questions during this session, if you can ask them via my YouTube channel, which is at Arden Jones Author, or on Facebook, which is Arden Jones Children's Author. Unfortunately, this streaming service that I use will not show me questions that are asked on Twitter or on Instagram, although I'm not currently live on Instagram. I will be uploading that later. So yeah, I'm just going to wait until 8 o'clock before we start. And I just hope everyone's having a lovely day. I have had a really great day today, just reading everyone's pictures on Right Mentor Pitch Hero. It has been amazing. There are so many wonderful pictures and so many hearts and so many agent comments on people's pictures. It's amazing. So if you are one of those that are getting hearts and comments, then massive well done. And if you're not, there's still time. It's still going on tomorrow, so I'm still here, keeping my fingers crossed for you. And it's such a wonderful experience. I feel like this pitch hero this time is just on like the Right Mental Hub is just so it's just brilliant. Everyone's loving it and everyone's enjoying themselves. Everyone's so supportive. So yeah, so that's what I've been keeping an eye on that today. A lot of people that I know are on there with their pictures, and they're so good. How agents choose is beyond me. How do they read them and go, oh God, I just want that one over that one? Like, oh, I don't like when like they've got the submissions in their emails, like they might fall in love with a few, but they can't take everyone. It's hard because like I'm like reading these pictures going, oh, I'd love that. I would love that. I would love that. But obviously you can't have everything. So I've just seen that it's 8 o'clock. And we are going to just kick off Kidlit Live from today. So this is the first episode. I am not very experienced in hosting anything. If I have people over, I'm a rubbish host, to be fair. I'm not great. I'm not the most socially comfortable person. So yeah, but I'm pushing my boundaries and I'm putting myself out there, and I want to do this because I want to be able to help other people on their querying journey, other writers that are maybe not quite ready for querying yet, people that have got an agent that are out on submission, people that are published, but it's just constant. There isn't, I don't think there's a time where you can just like fully relax and go, oh, this is easy. Like it's not. It's there's a lot more to it than I think what we all know, and everyone's learning. I'm still learning. I'm probably waffling here, so anyway. So I thought today, as it's the first one, and mainly that it's a bit of a test run. I've not done anything like this before, and before I start interviewing some wonderful people that I've got lined up, I would just have a chat about my writing journey and how I found my agent, and then answer some questions that I've had coming in. And if anyone has any questions, like I said, if you can just ask via my YouTube channel, or if you just want to say hi, if you can do that via YouTube or Facebook, because as I said earlier, this service that I use only shows me comments via them, so via those social media. So it's a bit of a pain, and hopefully I'll be able to find another streaming service soon. Um, so I thought I'll just talk a little bit about my writing journey. So I've always written extremely heartfelt, bad poetry, probably is what you'd call it. From a young age, it was my way of just having an outlet. Whether or not I was having a thought the other day about whether or not you're born with creativity or whether or not you learn to be creative. I suppose I think obviously it's probably different for everybody, but for me, I think I was maybe like I was born with it. Like I had a difficult childhood, and I just naturally just turned to writing to have an outlet. And I didn't do any like courses, or I wasn't told to do this. It was just something that I naturally did. So I feel like it's in me, and it was just mainly, like I said, bad poetry and And I did write some stories, as I was growing up. I say some of them was all right. Actually, my English teacher just wrote "no worries" on one of their stories once, and I thought that was amazing. I was like, "Brilliant!" Like he's not put any red lines through everything, and it's like great. And then, like as I got older, I thought, "Oh, like I need some constructive criticism of that. I just can't just go, oh, that's brilliant story, and I think I know everything about writing because I didn't. Obviously, I was like probably 13. So yeah, it would have been nice to have some feedback. We'll probably talk about feedback a bit later, but yeah, it's something that I've always loved doing. It's something that I've always felt I needed to do. Um, and even like at age 4, my sister come home from school and was asked to write a poem about the weather, and I just shouted, "The wind is strong, the wind is fast, it blows you over on your ass." And I'm like, I was 4, and then I went upstairs and wrote arse all over my wardrobe, which is very, very naughty. Like, yeah, yeah, I was in trouble, obviously. Um, so yeah, I think like that just come naturally. Whether I'm like, did I make that up? I still question that myself now. Did I make that up, or had I heard it somewhere? But I've looked it up. I can't find it anywhere. And my mum at the time, or my mum didn't know where I'd heard that. So I'm like, I made that up, and the meter was pretty good. So all good. So yeah, so I've always just had like some kind of creative flair, and not just with writing. Like as you can see behind me, there's lots of fabric, so I sew. I don't. Unfortunately, I'm really bad at art, so I can't do anything with a pen or a pencil or paint or anything like that. Um, but I love writing and I love making things. So, and then like as I got older, I just started writing, like I said, some really bad poetry, which was generally about heartbreak and um, some troubles I had at home. And then when as an adult, I kind of like didn't write as much. And then I I would always just write like little odd bits of poetry here and there, but I kind of just like stopped writing stories and stuff like that. But then when I had Willow, so like I was in my sorry, it's just saying one of my streams has a connection issue, so I'm not sure which one that is. I'm really sorry if that's cut off. Um, yeah, so then when I had Willow and I was like 30, 38, 39, um, I rediscovered my love for children's literature. I hadn't read like children's literature since I was a child, and I did read it to Haley growing up, but I didn't feel like I was able to write at that point in my life. And then I started reading more, and then I discovered a book called The Girl and the Dinosaur, which is written by Holly Hughes and illustrated by Sarah Massini. And I saw it on a supermarket shelf, and the illustration on that front cover, the dinosaur with the girl on in front of the big moon, just called out to me. So I bought that and fell in love with it, like absolutely fell in love with it. It's a beautiful story. If you haven't read it, I definitely recommend reading it. So yeah, I read that and I was like, oh wow, I'd love to be able to write something like that, and just didn't think that I could. Yeah, a working class background, not a great start in life, not I didn't think this was something that was accessible to me. I thought you had to have like a master's in creative writing, um, and have a like a middle class background. I just didn't think that someone like me could do that. Um, and then I looked up other books by Holly Hughes, and I read her books, and like I was on her website and I saw that she was like another working class author from Essex. So like, literally she's like 15, 20 minutes down the road from me, which was just unbelievable. And it just was like I just felt like, wow, maybe I am capable of doing something like that. So I started writing. It wasn't great. Obviously, like I think a lot of people start, we have these ideas. I had so many story ideas for picture books, and I started writing them and had no idea what I was doing, didn't understand like structure or message or anything like that. It was just me with ideas, and I was just like, right. I think my first story was like probably about 1800 words. It was like really, really long with, as I said, like no structure. And I was like, "How do I get this published?" So Google how to publish books, and it was like, you need to get an agent, or you can send. There's some publishers that accept submissions. So I was like, "I'm going to send it out." So I did. Obviously, it was rejections, and I was like, "I don't understand. Like, I think it's a really good story. My husband really liked it. I'd read it to Willow, and she kind of seemed to enjoy it, but didn't really know. She would smile when I read it. So I was like, "Yeah, that's really good." And some of my friends read it, and that had such good feedback. And I was like, "Oh no, like, why not?" So then I tried again. Um, with the storage, I think definitely had a little bit more structure the second time round. And again, I sent it out and it was rejections again. And I was like, I don't, maybe I need to like learn, like, I don't know what to do. So I then sort of joined Twitter as a writer, and found Right Mentor, and was like, then just threw myself into this amazing writing community and met so many wonderful people and learnt so much. And it completely turned my life around. And I'm just ever I will always be grateful for finding Right Mentor, because they just put me in touch with people. They show, like, they've on their hub, they've got like modules to learn, and then there's the workshops with the writers in residence. And I just was like, I'm doing this. So, and I just totally threw myself into it. And I started writing more stories, and the more I wrote, I think the better they got. And I was coming up with stronger ideas. I understood like what the message was, how to get that across, different like way to use language and finding your voice. And it was amazing. So I just absolutely, I'm always like telling everyone to join Right Mentor. I mean, there's so many other wonderful writing organisations that I absolutely love. Like I Am in Print, they're just, Sarah and Elaine are just wonderful people, and can't wait to go to the festival next week. So it's really exciting. And their writing sphere is also amazing. I'm As I started writing my writing journey, it was via Right Mentor that I just discovered just what actually children's literature and writing children's literature is about. And the community, the supportive community, is it's like no other. And like I said, when I first signed on, they've got the pitch hero going on today. It's just it's just such a wonderful place to be. So I found Right Mentor, and I booked. I mean, I'd sent so many queries out before, like during this, before I found my agent, and I was writing lots of stories, sending out queries, writing the cover letters, and just they was getting better, and my stories was getting better, but they wasn't good enough. Like they wasn't good enough to hook an agent at that point. Um, and then I happened to book a one-to-one via Right Mentor with my agent Molly. I booked Molly because I'd heard such lovely things about her from two of my writing friends, that's Jess Bleakley and Chris Madaffrey, and they said like she's absolutely lovely. They'd like I think Chris had known her via being an editor at Scholastic, and Jess had I think a one-to-one, or she'd submitted. I think she'd submitted to her before. She said she was just absolutely lovely. So just couldn't wait. I was like, I'm gonna book a one-to-one with her. And yeah, we just kind of hit it off and just got on really well. She loved my stories, thankfully. So the stories I subbed in, it was the unicorns, um, the pot monster, and Nan's shirt. And yeah, so she gave me some feedback, and I done some work on that, and then we sent it to her. And then it's like a month, just over a month later, had like an email which said, "Can we chat?" And I thought, this is not normal. Like, this doesn't happen. It's usually just like, oh, a rejection, or like you want to ask for more. But just saying, "Can we chat?" I was like, I've never had anything like this before. And it was the 2 days or the day before the I Am in Print Writing Festival, I had other one-to-ones. And Molly offered me then, and because of the relationship that we had on our one-to-one, I just knew that we would just get on, and it would be something that it was a relationship that I know will be a happy and supportive one for the rest of our lives if we're both really lucky. So and our writing my writing is good enough to stay with her and get some publications. So yeah, I was just meeting her there and via Right Mentor, because of Right Mentor being who started it all off for me in a way, just is this a little bit extra special for me. So that's how I found my agent. Um, I had a couple of questions which was quite similar in about like what is it like working with an agent, and it's brilliant, it's wonderful. They're your champion, and uh, they want you to succeed. Like so, working with Molly, we generally it's just via email usually, and we've had a couple of like Zooms and stuff, but most of it is via emails, like back and forth. But I'm out on submission at the moment again. So I had a first submission which was okay. I had some really good feedback, and I would say that feedback when you're out on submission, you actually generally you tend to get more feedback. So when you're querying, it's either like most of the time you'll just get like a form rejection, and sometimes you might get something nice said to you, but most of the time it's just a form rejection. But when you're out on submission, you actually get some feedback from publishers, which is I found really, really helpful to look back at when I'm trying to work on my stories. So it is really, really, really helpful. Um, so yeah, I'm out on submission again. So I'm keeping fingers crossed. It's been a while and I haven't had any news. So I'm thinking no news is good news anyway. That's what I'm hoping. And I'm manifesting that. So I thought I will, because I've set up this, I'm thinking trying to get the Kidlit lives to be sort of 15 around 15, 20 minutes, because I know that if you want to catch up on it, sometimes it's quite hard to catch up on something that might last like half an hour. But as I can see, I chatted for 15 minutes already. But that was just basically to introduce Kidlit Live and a little bit about me. So I thought I'd answer some questions that I had come in, and I've had quite a lot. I've had more than I expected. Um, so so a question that had come in is, I have a general question mark on Kidlit that floats around in my head, proving really difficult to nail down. It's around the idea that writing a decent children's book seems to have never been more within reach in terms of the resources and support available for writers to develop craft. And yet the chances of it getting into children's hands has never seemed more distant in terms of the publishing industry and the investment required for both traditional and self-publishing. So the question that they have is this notion actually true? I'm just going to have to make a cup of tea, so I'm just going to have a quick sip of that. Um, So personally, I don't really know too much about self-publishing. I'm really sorry. So I'll just chat a little bit about what I know about traditional publishing. And I think yes, it's harder at the moment. I think when you're talking about querying, I think agent submissions are like at an all-time high, and I think that's been like since the pandemic. A lot of us turned to writing. I mean, I was one of those, but it wasn't because of the pandemic. Like it just happened to be around that time. But I think a lot of people did start writing during the pandemic. Um, so their submissions have got higher. Um, and now their slush piles are bigger. I like to say treasure piles because I think there's some treasure hidden in there somewhere. Um, and because I think, years ago it would be their slush piles, treasure piles would be just stacked manuscripts up at like getting higher and higher, and now it's in emails, which makes it in a way more accessible and quicker. And with I don't know about you, but I when I was querying, I was just like sending out queries generally a lot. Like I would find the agents that I wanted, like I was would fit my work, and I would just send like submissions to them. I know some people that maybe only do like two or three at a time. I'm just like I sent loads out. um, I'm quite impatient, which is not good when you're a writer because publishing is really slow. Um, so yeah, and I get anxiety, so I'm just like I want to get everything done quickly, so I don't just go over it in my head over and over again. Um, so I think yeah, so during the pandemic, their emails probably just was like out of the window. And I think, it's getting higher and higher now. Like, you see an agent's open submission, and then they'll say, they've had like 200 submissions in the space of like a day or two, and it's just like how they're getting through that. It's beyond me. So I think in terms of getting an agent at this time, it's harder. They do have a lot more submissions to go through, um, and they have to be careful how many people they take on, because the more people that's writing, the more people will be writing a similar theme. So they're not going to take someone on that they've got very similar already on their books. Um, but I think in order to get an an agent to notice you, the main thing, like the first thing you want to be thinking of, obviously the stories are the most important, but order to get them to read the stories, you need a really good cover letter to stand out, because that's going to be read first, and they'll see them ideas, and if they love them ideas, then they're going to want to read on. If they think that idea isn't for them, then they're probably not as likely to read the story, if they think, well, that doesn't fit what they're looking for at the moment. Um, so I think because they're so busy, they've probably not got that amount of time to read all their stories. So that cover letter and getting that idea across, getting a hooky idea and getting that to show in your pitch and your cover letter is really, really important. A lot of like editors and agents are reading like in their own time outside of working hours in order to just keep on top of everything. So yeah, so just get your cover letter really stand out, get your pitches really strong, and then once you're with an agent, you don't have to worry about the cover letters because they do it for you. Phew! So that's all good. You don't have to do that anymore. Um, and again, so I'm only going by my experience, and generally I've only been out on sub with picture books, so I don't really know too much what it's like being out on sub with like chapter books or middle grade or YA. Not yet. So I have written a chapter book, and I'm currently writing my young adult novel. But I've only really currently got experience with the picture book tradition, like going out on query and submission with those. Um, and I would say if you do get an agent and then you're out of submission, I do think it's harder. Again, I like agreeing with what you've said. I think it's harder because, and especially at the moment with the cost of living crisis, that's been given us some like reasons as to why my some of my stories haven't been taken on, because of the cost of living crisis and being a debut author. So that I think that's quite hard to take, especially I think I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that publishing is doing so amazingly well even at this time. So it's hard. It's a bitter pill to swallow, I think, because we're constantly trying, and as a debut, it's harder to break into that market, especially with picture books. But it all comes down to sales. So you might find that an editor absolutely loves your story, but it will come down to, can this sell? Will this sell like enough, before if to see whether or not they will take your book on. And if they don't think it's something that will sell enough, then it will be a no at the moment, even if that editor absolutely loved it. So, but yeah, you mentioned like the investment, and it's huge. The writer's investment is huge, and I mean that can be financial. When you're thinking of like subscriptions and courses that you're doing and paying out for things like one-to-ones, and critique services, there's quite a lot to pay out for. But I feel like emotionally, investment is also huge. We spend so much time thinking about writing. Even if we're not writing, we're in bed and we're thinking about it. If you write picture books and you're writing in meter, I don't know how many of you, but I've certainly gone to sleep or just walking around the street and I'm talking in meter like constantly and thinking about where that stress lands, and you can't get away from it. So yeah, like your emotional investment in writing is huge. There's trying to come up with new ideas all the time. You're researching the market, you're researching agents, you're being active on social media, you're editing your work, you're feeding back on others' work. Like if you're in a critique group, which I highly suggest to join, because being in a group of supportive writers and friends will keep you going and also provide amazing feedback for you to work on. But that's a lot of time as well because you'll be critiquing their work as well. So it's kind of non-stop. You're taking courses to learn the craft, you're learning how to write cover letters and pitches and editing all those. And like, I know I've said it, but I'm gonna say it again, being active on social media, it's a big job. Like it's hard to do. I mean, some people I think are really natural. For me, I find social media quite difficult to keep on top of. I do really try, and I really love interacting with people. But trying to just constantly be active because of like you might not get seen another day if you're not active the day before. So the word for it has totally gone out of my head. Um, Algorithm, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, that you can mess up with them algorithms. If you're not constantly active, then you might not get seen on someone else's like news feed like the next day and stuff like that. It's hard. So and also you want to be you make these friends on there. I've made so many friends via Twitter and Instagram that I feel will be lifelong friends. That I'm going to be meeting some of them at the week next week at the writing festival. And absolutely can't wait. But just the investment of your time and your emotions for writing is a lot. So I would say it's really hard, and but I don't think it's impossible. And I think we all say it like we say, "Oh, you just keep going, and you'll get there." Hopefully you do. Hopefully we all do, but we'll never know. So we have to just keep going. If it's something that you're that passionate about, something you really want to do, that will show in your writing, and that will hopefully hook an agent, hook an editor. So all you can do is keep going. So I hope that answers that question. So I had some other questions, and hi Arden, I'm really curious about going on submission. How do you and your agent decide which stories to sub? Me personally, I don't really decide. I leave it with Molly. She knows what the publishers are looking for, like a whole lot more than I do. But she has like a little back catalogue of my manuscripts. So she'll advise what she thinks are the strongest texts and what might be right for the market at the moment. I do have a say. I can say I don't want that, or I really want this one to go out, and she is so supportive and will take on board what I want. But I'm pretty easygoing in that kind of sense that I just know that she knows better than me. So I'm like, you do you if that's what you think, then you do that. So um there's not really like a way we make decisions apart from the fact that I just know that Molly knows better than me. So um and another question, how many stories did you share with your agent before choosing which to sell? Um I'm not sure how if all agents work the same, but Molly's happy to accept my stories as and when I write them. So she's like, just send stuff over to me. And then when it's submission time, then that way we choose happens. So she'll choose what to go out. And there isn't like a set amount of stories to have. Like she just has this back catalogue. So I think she just maybe likes to have some there ready for maybe like an editor would say, has she got any more? And then she can send them over. So I'm guessing at the moment, Molly's probably got like 10 of my stories. Some of them have got like 3 or 4 different edits. I think like there's one story that's in prose and rhyme and also a different prose. So I think, yeah, there's 3 of one story basically there, but only one of them have gone out of submission. It was the one that she thought was strongest. Um, does your agent send the same stories to all publishers or pick those likely to be of interest? Well, I didn't check this time round, but on the first round of submission, Molly said that she was going to do a blanket submission to introduce me and my stories to all the publishers. So, and there's not been a chat about doing it differently this time around. So I'm just assuming I've just gone out to all publishers. Molly, if you when you watch this, you can let me know. It's not something I've worried too much about. So but yeah, I think it's just another blanket submission. Um, does your agent sub one story at a time or a selection? Um, a selection. So currently at the moment, I'm out of submission with 4 picture book stories, and one publisher has got a rewrite as well as those next 4 stories. Um, so I have had another question. We are running. I say running out of time. I can talk for ages, um, if you like. But I did say I was trying to get this within half an hour. But I have had a question, um, and it was about trademarks, and I won't go into too much detail about it, um, like my personal experience. But the question is, how do you know when to trademark and what's involved? I think it's something that a lot of writers, including myself, wouldn't have a clue about. Um, so I have trademarked 2 titles in the past, and you can trademark a title. It will say when you Google it, it will say you can't trademark a title, but you can in the UK. You can. You can trademark it under the class of books, which I think I might be wrong, but it might be class 16. But yeah, it's the class of books, so that can be whatever number that is. So you can do that, but I would advise to check everywhere you can. Google it, Amazon, Goodreads, anything you can think of where you have got an idea for a title and you want to see if there's another book out there with the same title. Do a trademark search on the Gov website, and if you can't find anything under that class of book, so if there was a trademark with your title, but it was under, say, the class of clothes or homeware, then that wouldn't matter if you wanted to write a book with the same name. Um, and if you have a title that you think is 100% worth protecting, you are happy to, if needed, pursue any legal action. That's entirely up to you if you want to trademark. But also, and a massive, what happens so much is that, and this isn't about trademarking, this is just about having a title. A publisher will say, "Oh, I think we could change the title," and you will generally do what the publisher wants you to do because they know what they want and they know how that's going to sell. So a lot of the time you could trademark a title, but that title might change. So you've just wasted like £300 for trademarking. Um, but also, we don't know what is happening behind the scenes. So we might have done all our searches and seen that there's no trademark for this title. You've searched everywhere, like you've gone mental. You've searched every single place you can think of, and there is not this title, and you're like, "Oh my God, I've got the best title ever." And I've been there. I've actually done this, and I put it on Twitter. I'm like, "I've just found the best title. I can't believe it's not been used." Um, anyway, so you can, and then if, but what can happen is that publishing is quite a secretive world, and they don't tend to say what they're working on until it's ready to go out on pre-sale. So things can be happening behind the scenes. Um, so there could be that in production, and then you could trademark that story has been working on while you're working on yours, or even before you've worked on yours. And then because you own a trademark, you then legally have to inform the publishers because you legally own it. They can't just use it. And that doesn't mean you have to like threaten to take them to court, but they do need to know that it's a registered trademark because it's legally owned. Um, and then you can decide how you want to work on that. So you can say you don't want them to use that title if you feel you are capable of doing that, or you could just make an agreement they can use it, or you can license it to them, or you can just say, okay, it's fine, I can sell you this trademark. There's so much you can do. Um, but I would just suggest that generally, if you've trademarked something and you're a querying author, and in my experience, I was a querying author, I didn't have an agent, I trademarked a title, and in behind the scenes, there was another book going on with the same title, and just as my book was possibly about to be acquired, we discovered there was another book with the same title. But um, I this other book was in production. Someone else had spent so much time writing and illustrating it, and all I'd done was I'd just done the same. I'd just written a story at the same time, possibly later, possibly earlier, who knows? But we'd both just written a story, so who am I to say I don't want them to use that? It's like, it's just not fair. So we have just come to an amicable agreement, and I think everyone's happy. So it's I would never like have made any like awkwardness going on there. So, but that's just my personal opinion. It depends how close you are to your story. If you feel like trademarking is something you really want to do, um, but personally, if if I went back in time now, I wouldn't trademark. Um, just because that was a whole lot of stress that it didn't need to happen. Like, if I hadn't trademarked it, I would have just said, "Oh, fair enough. There we go. That story's a different. It's just got a different, the same title, and I just have to do a different one." But because I legally owned it, I had to do something about it, and it was just a whole lot of stress that I didn't feel needed to be there. Um, so I just personally, I just wouldn't do it. And two people, and because especially with titles, they are often a lot of play on words, so other people can come up with it. So in fairness, for me, I didn't think it was worth like doing any legal action, because we're both just two creative people that have written a book with the same title and same character, and they deserve it. Like, it's just it's like, my book wasn't any better than theirs or anything like that, so I didn't feel the need to do any legal action. So personally, I wouldn't trademark again unless I had like a massive bestseller like the Gruffalo, and then I think that would just happen. But personally, I don't feel the need to do that. Um, I mean, I suppose if, on the other hand, like if my book had been acquired and had got so much work on it, and it was both they was both at a similar pace in production, then no one knows what would happen. That would be down to the publishers. But for personal experience, I would just happily go, okay, like, this book is just the same title. I'll just write a different one, and without any worries about any legalities or anything like that, because it's a whole lot of stress that you don't need. So that's about trademarking. Um, so I'd love to know about comp titles when it comes to picture books. Should they be included in the pitch or the cover letter, or are these more relevant for chapter books, middle grade, or young adult? So first, I'll just chat about what a comp title is, because I'm not sure, not everybody might know what that term means. So comp means comparison titles. So other books, TV shows, or films that have a similar theme to your story. Um, so, for example, one of my stories, Danceosaurus, is about a dinosaur finding happiness in being himself, would fit well between Perfectly Norman by Tom Percival and Strictly Come Dancing. Um, you can use TV shows, try and make it relevant. You don't want to be using books that were like so many years old. They want the agents and editors want to know if you know the market now, if how your book would sit in the current market. Um, you don't always have to use comp titles. I'd say that's a personal thing to you. Um, but I do think they do show that you have a good understanding of where your book would sit in the market, and it will give the agent or editor an idea of the theme or the tone of your story. Like, an agent is not gonna not be interested in your story because you haven't written a comp title. It will be about if they love the pitch, and then if they love the story. So I would say, if you don't have comp titles, it's not going to be the worst thing. And if you do, like, great. Like, it's entirely your decision. But I do think that if you understand the market and you know where your book would sit, it's a good thing to use to help agents and editors also understand that you know where that sits. Um, and where to put them when you're querying, I would always put the comp titles at the start. This is again, it is personal preference. I would put them at the start of the pitch, and that pitch would make up part of the cover letter. Um, I wouldn't put I often write my pitches on my story, but then if I was querying that, I wouldn't have them on the manuscript. It would just be within the cover letter, but I have them on the stories as I'm working because I feel it can help me just stay on track. So, like, often I write a pitch and it'll be like the character is this, and this is their problem, and this is their resolution. And then if I feel like I'm just going off on a tangent because I'm not always a massive plotter, I'm a bit of a, what can I say, planter or a potter, like um, a patter. I don't know. Yeah. So I I like to use them so I can make sure I stay on track when I'm writing my story, that I don't go off on a massive tangent. Although if you do, you might be going off in a better direction, so then you can just change your pitch. Um, and how do you write a pitch? Is a pitch the same as a blurb? Um, I think like pitches can be tricky to nail. I love writing pitches. I don't know if I'm just a bit weird. Um, but yeah, I love writing pitches. So I would advise spending like time on perfecting them and writing them before you send out your query. Make it hooky, really draw them in. Um, and because you really want an agent to just read that pitch, say, I can't wait to read that story, and then that your submission isn't going to be like put down at the bottom of a slush pile in case they might read it or not. If they love the sound of your pitch, they're going to want to read on. Um, there's so much talk in questions, like so much talk in questions in pitches. Shall we put shall we use questions? So I think that's like a lot of people will end a pitch on a question, which I feel like is more of a blurb. That if you're reading the back of a book, sometimes it will end with a question. If you're like reading the blurb of a film, it might end in a question. Like, can they make it there after all? But when you're writing a pitch, and so many, again, it's personal preference, and everybody has different ideas. But I would advise that you sh- you show how that story ends. You don't, obviously not in like massive detail. It's a short pitch. Um, but you don't want to leave the agent or editor question as to what happens. Like they want to say, oh, they do that. Um, so I would think like character, who is the character? What is their problem? What is their conflict? And their resolution, how they overcome it. So I was thinking I'd use one. So I'm going 45 minutes. I'm so sorry. So let's use one of my stories, the friendship match. I can't even talk. The friendship map, which is currently out on submission. So Shy Willow loves collecting all kinds of beach treasures, but when she finds an old map that leads her to murky waters, octopus dance-offs, bat caves, and pirates, Willow discovers the best type of treasure is friends. So, our friends. So the character is Willow. She's a shy girl who loves collecting. The problem or conflict is that she wants to find the treasure, but she has to get past obstacles first. And the resolution is that she discovers that friends are better than treasure. Um, so that is how that works, like in the three sort of steps. But you find out what happens. So Willow discovers the best type of treasure is friends. So we don't know how, and that will hopefully make editors or agents want to find out how she discovers the best type of treasure is friends. But you're not giving too much away. Um, I would say try and aim at 300 characters or less. If you're thinking about a Twitter pitch, Twitter's like 280 characters. And that would include comp titles, any hashtags that you use. So try and keep it as short as you can. 1 to 3 lines of a one-line elevator pitch if you can. And if you're writing the pitch on a cover letter, maybe include the word count in there because it could be they love the sound of the pitch. Oh, sorry, there's another connection issue. I hope that it's okay. I'll check this after. So where was I? Oh, I forgot where I was now. As if this is often what I do. So yes, cover letters. Sorry. So you're writing the cover letter and the pitch in there. I would write the title, then I write word count, and then I write the pitch. You can have like a one-line ending, like this is a story about friendship, or this is a story about finding being happy in yourself, and things like that. which I wouldn't say would include in your pitch characters. Like it would if you was writing on Twitter, obviously, but if you're writing a 3-line pitch and then you write a 1 line after, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Oh, and then so this is the last question, and I had this come in last night from one of my very good friends who I mentioned earlier, Jess, and she said, which is a really hard question for me, do you have a dream illustrator you'd like to work with? And I was like, oh my God, I can't just pick one. Like, so earlier I mentioned how I got into writing, um, and so the illustrator of the book, The Girl and the Dinosaur, is Sarah Massini, and I met her last year at the publishing picnic that was put on by Stephen Lenton, and she was just as lovely in person as how I'd imagined her to be, and we got on really well. Um, so yes, I love Sarah Massini, and I would love her to illustrate one of my books because I love her illustration so much. But obviously there's another meaning in there, emotionally for me, that she is the person that if I hadn't seen The Girl and the Dinosaur, I probably wouldn't be where I am now. I think I would have, like, hopefully, I'd like to think that I'd hopefully have got into writing, and I'm sure I would have because I love reading with Willow. But yeah, I to see that book and then work with that illustrator who inspired me to start writing, that would be a dream come true. I mean, I have other dream illustrators, and as I spoke about the friendship map earlier, I think when I think about my stories, I would love Sarah and Simi to illustrate this friendship map. So, publishing world manifestations. Let's make that happen. Anyway, so that's not. I have no saying over illustrators, obviously, but yeah, I would absolutely love Sarah to illustrate one of my books. I did write I wrote a list of who I'd like to illustrate all the books that are out on submission, which I thought I would say, but I'll leave that for now in case we get any more questions about that another time. Um, I have had I've had something come in. Oh, oh, hi Richard. Hi Arden. Thanks and great to listen to your thoughts, etc. I'm just starting, so happy to get tips and learn. Big up, fellow Essex peeps. Yay! Lovely. Thanks to that. It's been really, really lovely to just chat with you. I'm sorry that I've waffled on for nearly an hour. I literally thought I'd be like 15 minutes. I speak pretty fast, especially when I'm nervous. And I thought I'd just be like mumbling my whole way through it. But I've really, really enjoyed this. And I hope that I've come across okay and I'm not too boring. I have this massive um, overwhelming feeling all the time when I'm chatting away that I have just the most boring voice, and yeah. So I hope that people have listened and enjoyed it and found it helpful and inspiring. Maybe that would be good. And yeah, so next week, because I will be mainly doing this most weeks, but I will be not just be me. Yay! It won't just be me, it'd be someone else. So next week I have joining me is my friend Chris Madaffery, and she was an editor. Well, she's still in it. She's a freelance editor now, but she was an editor for Scholastic, as that's when I met her. Penguin. Oh my God, how I've totally just lost the last one. That has gone out of my head. Oh, Bloomsbury. Sorry, Chris. Yeah, so she was an editor for those, for all working on children's illustrated books. And so I have some great questions to ask her. She's also a children's author. She's writing middle grade story at the moment and picture books and non-fiction. And we will chat about that. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask her, please do send them my way. Again, you can ask on the night, but it would have to be via YouTube or Facebook because unfortunately I can't see any questions if anyone's asking if this is on Twitter. And I'm really, really sorry about that. So yes, so next week I will be joined by Chris Madaffery, and then the week after that I will be joined by Jess Bleakley, who is a picture book author and a young adult author. She has released her picture book, Qingxi, The Girl Who Ruled the Seas. So if you don't have that, I suggest getting it. It's a great pirate adventure about the most famous pirate in the world, who happens to be a female. So yeah, which we don't hear that much about. So it's a great book. I highly suggest reading that book. And then on the 30th, which will be a Tuesday that time, I am interviewing Marcela Ferreira, and she has recently released the picture book The Queen Next Door. So I can't wait to talk to her about that. So I won't waffle on anymore. I'm coming up to 50 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. And I hope I haven't bored you all to death. And I will see you next week.